What's going on, guys, and welcome to Footy with an Edge. Chelsea have just drawn 2-2 with Everton to drop 2 points at home in what is a heartbreaking result for Potter and Chelsea fans, because you guys absolutely deserve to win that game. How Koulibaly gets skinned by Ellis Sims, a 22-year-old with just 99 Premier League minutes before today, is beyond me. And arguably, Kepa should have done better with a low shot that's going straight at him. But if you can get over the disappointment of that result, there were lots of positives to take from that game today. For the first time in a long time, Chelsea actually looked like a top 4 Premier League club in possession. Some of the player movement and interchangeability that we saw today looked absolutely sublime in the first half. And yes, Chelsea didn't manage to create too many clear-cut chances on the back of that great movement, but at least those patterns of play are starting to emerge. I also think that this game showed us that Potter has finally found the perfect system for Enzo Fernandez, and we'll discuss that in this video. Also, João Felix and Kai Havertz seem to have finally found a home in that front line, as they're both having more of an impact in games. Before we get into the analysis, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the video, and don't forget to turn on all notifications to never miss out on content just like this. Like I've mentioned several times on this channel already, Graham Potter loves to tinker with his formations and his lineups from game to game, and that's exactly what he did today. After playing in the 3-4-3 against Leicester with a front three of Felix, Mudryk, and Havertz, he played in a 3-4-2-1 with a front three of Pulisic, Felix, and Havertz. I was a little surprised to see Potter drop Mudryk from the starting lineup, because I think he could have really used a run of games to gain confidence in this team. But seeing Pulisic off the left and Felix through the middle just goes to show that Potter has what it takes to make his fluid system work with any combination of forwards he has at his disposal. In fact, in the last 4 games against Leeds, Dortmund, Leicester, and Everton, he has played Sterling, Mudryk, and Felix through the middle, and has been successful with all 3 of them. So while Chelsea started in a 3-4-2-1, they played a 3-2-2-3 in possession that looked like this. In this shape, you had Felix playing through the middle with Chilwell and James playing really high and wide next to him. Behind them were Havertz and Pulisic playing as the 10s in the inside spaces that you see here. Then you had Enzo and Kovacic playing as the double pivot in midfield, who are building up the play from central areas and occasionally getting forward. Interestingly, I saw Kovacic drop a little deeper than Enzo today to get the ball off the back 3, which freed up Enzo a little bit more to get forward, and we'll discuss Enzo's role in detail later in the video. Then you had the back 3 of Fofana, Koulibaly, and Badiashile, and he played Badiashile instead of Cucurella this game. And like we discussed in the Leicester video, Potter wants the left and the right center back to take turns to double up as wing backs. So occasionally, the shape looked like a 2-3-2-3 when Chelsea had possession deep in Everton's half. As we discussed after the Leicester game, Potter expects 3 key things from his players: tactical and positional flexibility, especially in the final third, creating overloads in wide areas to make space for runners through the middle, and using high possession and those overloads to pin opponents in their own half so that the team creates lots of chances and high XG numbers. And that's exactly what Chelsea was able to achieve against Everton today. Sean Dyche's plan was to pack the midfield with strong players that were willing to work hard and create a compact shape of 5, including the 2 central defenders that you see here. Doucouré, Onana, Gay, Keane, and Tarkowski are a tough bunch to weave your way through, but the interchangeable movement from Chelsea's front 7 players, particularly the front 3 of Pulisic, Felix, and Havertz, was absolutely impossible for Everton to mark defensively. And we have a few examples of this from the first half today. We start with Kovacic on the ball deep in his own half, and notice how Pulisic and Havertz are playing deep and narrow in midfield, creating extra room for the wingbacks in Chilwell and Reece James. As the ball goes out to Chilwell, look at how all 3 Chelsea forwards are operating between the midfield and defensive lines of Everton, as we can see here. As Chilwell moves forward to the halfway line, the Everton midfield gets back into position, but their defense is kind of split because Seamus Coleman tries to defend Chilwell and gets out of position. So there's this extra room between Coleman and Keane that Pulisic can exploit, and he's moved from this position here to try to do just that. But Chilwell decides to go back to Badiashile, and the play stops here momentarily. As Badiashile gets his head up, fires a pass into Pulisic on this side, and he's now on the touchline, but notice how Felix has taken a few steps towards him to offer the 1-2 opportunity. Now either Felix makes this run himself into this channel and gets the ball from Pulisic, or Pulisic plays a 1-2 with João Felix and gets himself back into this line where Felix can play it through here. But ultimately, Felix decides to stand his ground, creating some room from the defenders here, and Pulisic decides to continue by himself, but he ends up getting crowded out by the defenders that are around him. I personally thought that that Felix in this situation made the wrong call by standing his ground. Had he run into that channel between Coleman and Keane, there would be much more space on the inside for Pulisic to get into, but you can see how the interchangeability of Potter's forwards was causing Everton's midfield and defense trouble in this play. In this clip, we start with Koulibaly on the ball in defense, and again we see Havertz and Pulisic playing deep and narrow in midfield to create that space for wingbacks on the touchline. As we skip forward a little, Kovacic ends up with the ball in midfield and he's ready to play it into Pulisic in this central area. As you can see here, Pulisic is now even more central than Felix up top, and Havertz is still holding narrow on the right hand side. So Kovacic plays that pass into Pulisic and it takes out the entire Everton midfield, and look at how the Chelsea forwards are yet again between the defense and midfield line. And these guys playing narrow forces Everton to stay compact as well, creating that huge space that we see here for Chilwell on the left hand side. As we play along, we see Potter's attacking philosophy in action right here. Coleman and Godfrey, the two fullbacks, are forced to stay narrow and compact to mark these two forwards in Felix and Havertz, which creates crazy amounts of space for both Chilwell and Reece James on both sides. And if Pulisic can play this ball through the middle here for Reece James to get on the end of, he can put in a nice cross for either Felix or Chilwell to get onto, and that fullback to fullback connection could be a throwback to Conte's Chelsea, where you'd often see Victor Moses and Alonso combine for a goal. But instead, Pulisic rolls it out to Chilwell on the left, and Chilwell plays it out first time to Felix in the middle, and Felix tries to cushion it for Havertz to shoot on goal, but it doesn't really come off. But I think you guys see what I'm talking about here. Chelsea are starting to understand Potter's system, and their best players are starting to get in the right positions at the right time. Of course, they need time to fine-tune their execution in the final third, but that will come as they play more and more games. Now, I think the most exciting takeaway for Chelsea fans from those two clips is that even though Havertz was not directly involved in the build-up, he was impacting the play by getting into good positions. I think Havertz has a bit of a weird profile as a forward because he's tall but not particularly strong or good in the air. He's fast, but over long distances, he doesn't have that burst of pace to drop his shoulders and beat a man one-on-one. So you can't really play him as a traditional winger or even as a traditional number 9. And that's exactly why he hasn't really looked like a 70 million player since joining Chelsea from Leverkusen. To get the best out of him, you have to play him in central areas where his short passing can be utilized in the build-up and he can make intelligent runs off the ball to get to the final third and finish off chances. And I think his current role as the right-sided number 10 works really well for him, because he doesn't really need to be the focal point through the middle where he's asked to hold up the ball a lot with only 20 to 25 touches per game. Instead, he shares the hold up duties with the three forwards that you see here. He can actually drop deeper to influence the game with about 50 to 60 touches per game like he had today. Now, the story with João Felix is a little bit different. He has the explosive pace and the skills to be a winger, but he's also excellent at build-up play, which means you can get a lot of value by playing him in central areas. Look, there's no doubt that Felix is a modern forward who's great in possession all over the pitch, making him a Swiss Army knife that someone like Pep or Klopp or Ten Hag would love in their teams. And he fits Potter's system like a glove because tactical and positional flexibility is his number one requirement. But Chelsea have a few issues with signing him for next season. And number one being Atletico Madrid are going to want an arm and a leg to get him on a permanent transfer. And while we've seen Todd Boehly be ready to fork out big money on young and talented players just like Felix, you really have to wonder how much longer they can keep doing this. Eventually, they'll start saying no to deals, and if Atleti asks for more than 100 million or so, I think Boehly will say no. Chelsea fans, get in the comments below, how much would you be willing to pay for João Felix in the summer? Personally, I wouldn't pay a penny more than 70 million, and even that is an overspend, and I'll explain why. Number two, without counting Felix, Chelsea will have 12 forwards in the squad next season for 4 positions at the most. From these 12, I could see them selling Pulisic, Ziyech, Hudson-Odoi, and Aubameyang, which still leaves you with 8 players for 4 positions. And it's not like there's a clear hierarchy of 4 first-team players and 4 rotation players either. Potter will have to pick 4 starters from Nkunku, Havertz, Sterling, Mudryk, Lukaku, and Armando Broja. And even if you sell Lukaku, you can add Noni Madueke into that starting contention to make 6 potential starters for those 4 spots. So spending 100 million or even 70 million in an area where you already have so much competition just doesn't make sense to me. Now we got to talk about Enzo Fernandez's effectiveness in this team because he's not just another midfielder. He won Young Player of the Tournament at the World Cup. He broke the British transfer record in moving from Benfica in January, and there were a lot of expectations on those young shoulders. I think all Premier League fans would agree that he's been a resounding success in his first 9 games at Chelsea. He has the most touches and progressive passes per 90 in the Premier League, and I'd be willing to bet he has the most long passes completed per 90 as well. This guy absolutely epitomizes the modern midfielder. He can shoot, pass, dribble, and defend all at a very high level. Now, I compared Enzo's stats to several Premier League CDMs right after Chelsea purchased him on deadline day, and I concluded that while he can play as the sole CDM and just sit back and play the deep lying playmaker role, his attacking talents would be completely wasted in that role. And unfortunately, Potter opted for the 4-2-3-1 in Enzo's first 5 games against Fulham, West Ham, Dortmund first leg, Southampton, and Tottenham, and while he was great in those games, he had to do it by sitting relatively deep, often as a lone CDM. But since Potter has moved to the back 3 and Kovacic has been consistently in the lineup next to him, Enzo has had the license to get forward a lot more, and we have some clips here to show you just that. We start with Kepa rolling out the ball to Reece James in midfield. As Reece James gets on the ball, there are quite a few Everton midfielders around him, so it appears that he has no real passing options, as we'll see right there. And as we play it along a bit more and pause it right here, you can see that McNeil is closing down Reece James in this area, so he has to pass the ball, and Enzo recognizes this and is asking for the ball in this area. But if we analyze the situation closely, Gray and Onana are both in great positions to press Enzo as soon as he receives the ball, so it's a really risky pass. But James plays it anyways, and Enzo knows that he doesn't have a lot of time and space, so he's ready to play it out to Havertz first time. And I want you guys to appreciate just how aware Enzo is of his surroundings. He knows exactly where Havertz is, and he knows exactly where the Everton midfielders are, so he has the passing angle to Havertz mapped out a few seconds even before the ball gets to him. As the ball gets to Havertz, you can see that Enzo's already on his bike to get into this position here, and he makes this run because he knows that Godfrey and Tarkowski are gonna press Havertz as soon as he gets the ball, which means all Havertz needs to do is pop the ball into this space here, and Chelsea are straight through on the counterattack. So Havertz pops it to Enzo, and now Chelsea are basically 3v2 straight through on goal, as you can see here. And Tarkowski is already making this move towards Enzo to press the ball. So they'll basically be 2v1 very shortly as long as Enzo can play this ball into Felix's path. And that's exactly what Enzo does. And now we can see that Chelsea are 2v1 against Coleman with Pulisic making the run on the outside. And as we play it along a bit further, look at how much space Pulisic is in. If Felix can play a ball with the right weight into this area here, Pulisic gets there before Pickford can, and you'd back Pulisic in that area to put it into the back of the net. But unfortunately, he cuts it back into this area inside of Coleman, and the ball is a little behind Pulisic, who can't really do anything with it. So this whole play comes from the brilliance of Enzo Fernandez. He's the one that asked for it in a tight space even though he's under pressure. He plays it out perfectly to Havertz and gets it back from him and plays Felix in behind. When Enzo was playing with Gallagher and Mount in the 4-2-3-1 for a few games, this would be one of them in this area instead of Enzo. But in the back 3 that Potter's using now, Enzo has so much defensive support with the 3 center backs and the 2 wing backs who can also defend, that Enzo has the license and feels comfortable enough to make these runs into the final third. Now we have another clip to show you some Enzo magic. At the end of the first half, Enzo is battling it out with Dwight McNeil in this area, who is a hard-working winger that used to play for Sean Dyche at Burnley. So you know he's a winger that's had some defensive sessions. As we play it, Enzo comes inside to get some separation from McNeil, and he forces McNeil to overcommit while pulling off a ridiculous skill to pop it past him and get clean through in this area here. Now all he has to do is get to the edge of the box or inside the box and put a cross into the 3 Chelsea players that are waiting in this area, but McNeil ends up fouling him and Chelsea win a free kick here. The point of showing you this clip is that as a CDM in a back 4 formation, I often saw Enzo more centrally in these situations, maybe in this area, acting as the last man or the second last man in front of goal. Now he has Reece James and Fofana behind him, so he doesn't mind committing a little bit more in attack, and you get to see him pulling off these ridiculous skills at the edge of the box. And Enzo's stats today were disgustingly good. 3 shots, 2 chances created, 90% pass accuracy, 85 touches, 1 dribble, 15 passes into the final third. He even won 3 tackles and 7 of his ground duels, but the best stat of them all, at least for me, was 10 accurate long balls out of 13 attempted. I think he's got to be the best in the world at the switch of play from from one flank to the other. And Benfica and River Plate fans will know that this has always been his trademark move. The overall point here is that Enzo is looking great in A2 next to Kovacic in Potter's back 3 system, and long may it continue. In closing thoughts, I thought there were a lot more great performances for Chelsea today, like Chilwell, Kovacic, Fofana, and James, but I don't think anyone wants to watch a 30-minute video on this game. So I'll just say this, Potter's back 3 system, whether it's a 3-4-2-1 or the 3-4-3, is getting the most out of the front 3, the midfield 2, and both wingbacks. With 7 out of 11 players being able to consistently play well, it's only a matter of time before Chelsea become a scary proposition to play against. And I know you guys got a tough draw in the Champions League quarterfinals against Real Madrid, but who knows, you guys could cause the biggest upset this year because nobody is betting on you guys to win that game. I'm pretty sure Bully will be betting on Madrid to win back some of that transfer spend that he's done in the last 2 windows. So Chelsea fans, get in the comments with your thoughts about this game. Who was your man of the match? Personally, I think it was either Havertz, or you could give it to Enzo as well. Thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.